Welcome to the Real Estate Investor Meetup. I'm your host, Matt Morrow. This is a place where knowledge is shared, friends collaborate as we help each other to succeed in both our real estate and personal goals. We are a group of like-minded individuals from across the country who are here to help and support each other. Investors, realtors, entrepreneurs, and many others contribute to providing diverse and practical content for our events. Most importantly, our mentors are looking forward to helping new and experienced investors in their journeys. Thanks for joining. We hope you enjoy the show and encourage you to bring others who may find value as we invest in our collective future. Hey guys, we got a great show today. My good friend Bob Sacco comes on, talks about how to deal with some problem tenants, issues that may arise. We also go into discussions about isolating yourself from everyone as far as phone numbers, emails, PO boxes, just some landlord protection. So look forward to the show. Here's Bob.
Sit down, talk to them, say, okay, 2 months from now, you're not going to be living here. Whether it's because you're evicted, you're drug out by the sheriff, or because you voluntarily packed up your stuff and left. Either way, 2 months from now, you're not going to be living here. That's a fact.
Now, if Top Gun happens to come on TV, I know at least half this call is going to drop off. And then Brian, Ryan, and TJ and Donald are going to be left to talk about whatever you got. All right, Bob, you want to do your thing?
Sure. Okay. For those of you I haven't met before, give you a little background. Bob Sacco, live in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and bought my first property, a 3-unit, back in 1996. And I remember the year because my wife was pregnant with our first child at the time, my now ex-wife. So bought the first place, a 3-unit in Bethlehem back in 96, rehabbed 2 of the apartments, rented those out, built some equity, eventually refinanced, took some cash out, bought another one, did some work on that, and so on and so forth. At the peak, we had 25 units total. Most of them were 2 units, 3 units. We had 1 4-unit. When the bank stopped giving me money, I took on a partner and we got the mortgages in his name. And that's how we're able to get up to the 25 units. And then eventually I bought him out in 2008, the height of the market. So he made out very well on that. And we kept most of the places until about 3-4 years ago. And then we slowly started selling them off. And now I'm down to a 2-unit and a single family that I have. Matt asked me to talk about a few of my experiences in landlording, specifically finding tenants and screening tenants. What I've used, and I've been doing this so long, I'm so old. Initially, it was newspaper ads in the morning call. Apparently, that doesn't work anymore. But what I recommend is, first step is get the word out there, okay? Get the Craigslist ads going. A good Craigslist ad it's worth the time and effort you put into it. Crappy ad, crappy apartment. Nice ad, nice apartment. So get the word out there, get the Craigslist ad, Facebook Marketplace, things like that. Free is better. You could hire a nice realtor like Matt to show the place for you, but he's going to take, I believe, like 1 month's rent as a finder's fee if you get a tenant.
Realtors are not worth the wait unless there's a huge benefit to it. Don't use them.
Yeah, you're going to be paying good money for a realtor or a management company to be listing your place and showing it. If you have the time, you can do the work yourself, getting it out there and finding a good tenant. As far as the showings of the tenants, my experience is a good percentage of the tenants or the prospective tenants don't show up. They call up, they're super interested, you schedule an appointment. Yeah, I'll see you there Tuesday at 1:00, and you end up sitting there by yourself. A good percentage don't show up. How we've combated that is schedule them together. Somebody calls up, they're interested. Hey, I will be showing the place on Tuesday between noon and 2. Come on over. All right. That way you schedule 10 people, 5 of them will show up. You also get a bit of a competition going on there because people are looking, maybe the place is not exactly what they're looking for, but fairly nice, but they're afraid somebody else is going to get it. So you get some competition where they don't want to lose out to another prospective tenant. You get a little infighting going on there. So you get people to actually take the leap and, agree to move into the apartment. When I'm showing the apartment, when I'm interviewing tenants, and it is an interview, I mean, they are going to be, in charge of your $100,000 property for the next couple of years. So look very closely at them. I tell everybody that I do a criminal history check and a credit check, and I hand them the form where they sign acknowledging or authorizing me to do that. Do I do it? No, not always. But if they know they have bad credit and they think I'm doing a credit check, I'm never going to hear from them again. Same thing with the criminal history. If they know there's stuff pending, I'm never going to hear from them again. So that one piece of paper gets rid of a whole lot of prospective problem tenants. When I do narrow it down to the tenants I like, I will do the credit check and I will do the criminal history. The criminal history, the easiest thing is on your phone. I use edocket.com, which will search all Pennsylvania records for criminal, civil, evictions, speeding tickets, all that kind of stuff. It's a free app on your iPhone. eDocket, put in the name. You don't even need the date of birth unless their name is John Smith, and you get anything you're looking for. Did they have a speeding ticket back in 2004? Are they undergoing an eviction right now? So you get a lot of information from that. So doing the credit check and doing the criminal history, not on everybody, but on your final few, definitely worth the effort. Checking my notes here. If you don't like doing the cattle call open house of tenants, I would definitely recommend having the people call you 1 hour before the showing. Okay, we're scheduled for Tuesday at 1 o'clock. Please call me 1 hour before to confirm you're there. If I don't hear from you, I'm not showing up, especially if you have to drive to get to the place. And if they don't show up and then they call an hour later with an excuse, if they can't show up to see the apartment, are they going to show up to pay the rent? You got to ask yourself that. You're looking for reliability here. Once you do have a tenant there, they're looking at the place. Like I said, you're interviewing them. Okay. How do they look? How are they dressed? I really like to look at their car. If they pull up and there is trash piled all the way up to the bottom of the windows in the back seat, what's the apartment going to look like in a few months? If they can't clean their car, they're not going to clean their apartment. So I am judging them that way. How are they dressed? Do they smell like smoke? Okay. Do you see dog and cat hair all over the place? And then it's, like I said, an interview. So talk to them, so where you living now? What do you do for a living? Are you from the area? I shoot for long-term tenants. I'd rather go a little bit cheaper and get 10 years out of a tenant, which is 10 years that I'm not painting, 10 years that I'm not showing the place. So I look to find somebody that will be a good match. Single people, eventually they're going to get married or have kids, or you find somebody that came in, newlywed couple that have a baby. How long until they outgrow the place? So I like playing the long game, getting a tenant that I know will be there for the long haul. And a couple things on that line is, so they're going to move into the place. Well, what comes with them? So single guys going to have parties. Women are going to attract single guys. My perfect one is a little old lady who's going to stay there for a long time, not raise hell, not have any wild parties, but few and far between. But with all these things in mind, be cautious about obviously discriminating against people. And probably Matt, with all the ethics training he had to take as a realtor, could give you more guidance on that. We're not discriminating. I'm not going to rent to orange people or green people or purple people. But I am finding the person who is the best fit for the apartment. You have hardwood floors and they have a toddler, the people downstairs are going to complain about the noise. So keep that in mind. Maybe not honest or ethical, but I have rented to my brother-in-law a dozen times. Anytime somebody said, I really, really want the place, I'd say, my brother-in-law called, he's going through a divorce, he needs it. So that would be my go-to excuse, is my poor brother-in-law is always getting divorced and I'm renting out to family. So I'm sorry, you're a great tenant. I'll keep you in mind, but the place is taken by family. So I've used that quite a few times. Never had any problems with it. So once you find the tenant, you got the money, you did the background, everything's good. They moved in there. How do we keep them? Okay, how do we keep a good tenant? And it's worth keeping the good tenant. Like I said, you're going through all these years without painting, without showing the place, without replacing the carpet. Just the loss of one tenant, think of the costs you're incurring. All the maintenance, the time away from your regular job to show the place, the advertising, all that. It makes sense to get a good tenant, keep them in there a long time. Some ways to do that: roll the rent increase right into the lease. A friend of mine had a lease that I borrowed and used for a couple of years. He would have 2 blanks that current rental increase in Lehigh Valley is X percent. Okay. With this in mind, an automatic increase of usually 1% less is rolled into your lease automatically at the renewal. So if rents in Lehigh Valley increase 8% per year, then you write right in your lease that it's going to increase by 7% or 6%. Great way to not have to ruin their day by calling them up and saying the rent is going to increase. They already know it going in. They've already signed up for that. And a nice present for them, if they were a great tenant, is, you know what? I'm going to drop that another percent. You've been here a long time. You're taking care of the place. I'm going to drop that another percent. They think they're getting a gift. It works for you. You're still getting a little extra money. So that's one way of keeping them. Recognizing them. I've gone around and given Christmas presents to my tenants. We would go around a couple of days before Christmas with little $5 boxes of chocolates and a card and go knocking on the door with a Santa hat. And hey, thank you for being such wonderful tenants. And even the bad tenants, I did that too. But thank them for being such wonderful tenants. And I think it goes a long way. Maybe it gives them a little more appreciation for you, which translates into a little more respect for your home that they're living in. One of the big things I've done is with my really good tenants is try to be flexible. And I had a girl, she lived with me for, over 10 years. And a few times she ran into hard times. Her car broke down, whatever. And I would say, Jen, you know what? Give me half of the rent, okay, for this month. And when you get back on your feet, things get back in order, give me the other half when you can. All right. And she thought it was a gift from God. She thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. She would give me half the rent or whatever she could afford. And sure enough, 2-3 months down the road, she would give me the rest. Or she'd throw an extra $100 a month on the rent until she was caught up. It helped her out of a bad situation. And it helped me because I really didn't want to go in there and clean that place after she lived there for 10 years with cats. So it was a win-win for both of us. And like I said, I got over 10 years out of her as a tenant. And she's just one example, but done that several times. You get a good tenant, you have them in there, they're taking care of the place. It's worth the effort and it's worth the money to keep them in there. So I've reached the bottom of my notes. That's all I planned on talking about. Hopefully I didn't take up too much time. Anybody have any questions for me on what I covered? Matt, yes.
I have one that I called you about the other day, and I think would be worthwhile for everyone to hear. I had to assure myself that tenants would be leaving at the conclusion of their lease. Problem tenants that I talked about before. Initially, they were good long-term tenants of 8 years. However, they're not, and they're causing issues, or the police are staying there frequently to the point where they know the property and the people by name. And I called Bob. I just want to make sure I had my head in the right space, dealing with difficult people and highly encouraging someone within the law to leave can be a very tricky way to tiptoe around tenants. In this environment, you have a moratorium that's preventing evictions of people in certain places and of certain backgrounds, but it does not protect against their lease ending. So if you have 6 months to go on your lease and you lose your job, the judge can block the fact that you can evict the person. However, at least in our area, Brian, I'm not sure about out west, but I have had direct confirmation from local courts that this is allowing landlords to evict people who stay past the end of their lease or holdover tenants. Bob, what kind of insight can you give to, if you're managing your property, you're not using a property manager, how do you deal with difficult tenants? Not as a police officer with your taser. You can't do that. But as the landlord, how do you deal with people that necessarily don't want to leave?
One of the things that I like to do is I use cash for keys. Okay. Sit down, talk to them and say, okay, 2 months from now, you're not going to be living here, whether it's because you're evicted and you're drug out by the sheriff or because you voluntarily packed up your stuff and left. Either way, 2 months from now, you're not going to be living here. That's a fact. How are we going to get to that point? And I'll say, here's what I'll do. I show up on the 31st of the month. I inspect the place. It's clean. It's spotless. Nothing's broken. You hand me the keys to the apartment. I will hand you a check for $100. That's it. Don't worry about the security deposit. Don't worry about the rent, all that kind of stuff. Here, I will give you money. You give me the keys. The place is clean. When you think about it, filing for an eviction, I think it's about $125 at the magistrate. So if you give them a check for $100, you save 25. It also motivates them to clean the place, to get out in time, to not do any damage. They have a motivation to do what you want. So cash for keys, that's one way. And it's been very effective. I think maybe twice actually had to go the route of getting the constable to pull people out and padlock the door. But 9 times out of 10, yes, they will get out. Most of the time they'll clean the place, they'll wait for the check. Thank you for being so nice and giving them the check, but that is one of my go-to methods.
I did have to step away for a second, so I'm sorry if this was talked about, but going along with what you said, it was in one of the Bigger Pockets books that I read. I think I remember in that type of a situation, they also recommended paying for the moving vans and saying, just so you know, the moving vans will be here on whatever date. Don't worry about the cost. I'm taking care of it. And usually they're so happy that you did that the couple $100 for the moving vans, they're ready to go on that date. The moving vans pull up, they exit. And in the long run, like you said, it's a lot cheaper to do that than it would be to drag it out in court or
Yep.
get ugly, have to get ugly with them. So I just wanted to mention that I did read that.
Yep, another good method. Mm-hmm. Matt, another question? Oh,
Yeah, I have a question. So I'm just curious, just out of curiosity, how much money does it cost if you actually go through with an eviction with somebody?
wow. The filing fee is $125.
Mhm.
And if you get a lawyer, that's going to be $1 gazillion right there. Also, once you file, they have no motivation to keep paying the rent. So you're not going to get another penny from them. And from when you file until you have the hearing, until they're actually out, is a minimum 45 days, closer to 60 to 90 days.
And then there's a chance too, the judge might not evict them, right? Is that another possibility?
Yeah, I had a judge say, well, I understand she hasn't paid in 2 months, but let's give her another 30 days.
Mhm.
Why?
Right, yeah.
Mhm.
So,
So evictions aren't always really worth it then.
Richard is not on the call right now, but he has a situation that he's been dealing with a tenant who hasn't been paying since, I believe it was February of 2020. It's going on almost a full year. This woman is squatting. He's gone through the property management's attorney to try and get her evicted. And it's still to the point the property's in the process of being sold, but the new buyers won't follow through with the contract until they know this woman's out. And Ryan, to answer your question, it could be not so much a monetary cost of eviction, but the lack of being able to rent that to someone else is going to kill
Right.
all your cash flow, all your time and energy. Who know what the cost could be associated with it, what damage they're going to do.
There's no money to maintain it or anything like that. It's just
Right.
taking a loss each month.
I'm trying to find a way to encourage them out, even though it might be a small financial hit up front, like Bob said, cash for keys. You know, the people who I've asked to move, they're going to get a half month's rent off if they're out on time and the house is clean on move out day. And I've told them that, and it's amazing the motivation it puts behind people who seemingly have nowhere else to go.
Yeah, because I was reading that in one of the books, one of the bigger pocket books. They said a lot of times you're better off just making them an offer to pay them money to move than it is actually going through with an eviction process. I mean, even if it's 1 month's rent and it's $800, that's $800 is nothing compared to the thousands of dollars you're going to lose, in the long run when it comes to the rent you're losing, plus whatever legal fees you're going to incur throughout the whole process.
The general rule of thumb is each month that the unit is vacant or not paying its entire year of cash flow, depending on how you run your numbers. So
I think too, you have to remember that most renters are literally living paycheck to paycheck. So to move out of your place and into another, they have to come up with a down payment. They have to come up with a security deposit. And some of them just don't have that in the bank, right? Let's face it. So doing cash for keys, even if you hand them cash the day they move out, they might be able to work out something with a new landlord that I'll pay the security deposit before you hand me the key, but I can only pay half of it till then or something. It's enough motivation and enough incentive to help them make the jump. Sometimes they even want to make the jump and they're trapped. They can't come up with the money to get the new place to leave the old place.
Right. It's better than nothing.
I listened to a pretty good podcast. I think it was one of the bigger pocket ones. I can't remember. No, it was somebody who came to the Pittsburgh Acre Real Estate Group. So we have a pretty active real estate group in Pittsburgh. It has about 400 members. Had a meeting Tuesday night. But somebody shared something that the speaker even volunteered and gave that to other people. And it's something called a minimum acceptance criteria. And if I had the ability, I do, I can share screen here. No, I can't. Matt would have to turn that on for me, but I'd be glad to send that to you. But it's a one-page document that says, this is what I'm looking for, right? You have to make 3 times the rent and income. You need this credit score. I am going to check your background check, blah, 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 blah. I will call former landlords. So what I did, and I'm no expert because I haven't been doing this very long. I just listen to what other people do and copy it because they've been through it. But if I have people that say, hey, I'm interested, the first thing I do is I send them a copy of that document. And then about half of them drop off the face of the earth because the document says, I'm serious about checking your background and all that. I will do that. I will call previous landlords. And some of them run like cockroaches from light, right? And then the ones who stay are generally, pretty good. But like Bob said, you still have people, even after they go through that they try to talk their way out of the criteria. I accept 1 cat or a dog. Okay. Yeah. Then they come look at the house. Oh, by the way, we have a dog, a cat, and an iguana, and, blah, 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 and they think that if they're really nice to you, that you'll just go, okay. And what you have to do is you blame the system. You say, listen, if I make an exception for you and I don't for my other renters, then I could get into trouble, right? So I have to apply, I have more than one property. You don't tell them whether that's 2 or 100 or, if you have one, you just say, if it could be the next guy coming in, but if you don't treat everybody the same, you could get into trouble.
Right.
Yeah. Now, I actually violated my rule because my lease says only 1 dog, small or mid-size, and I have a guy that has 2 dogs, but he's an ex-military dog trainer, and his dogs are like, little Marines. They're perfectly trained. So I did make an exception for him. But And I could send that to you, Matt. It's that minimum acceptance criteria. If you send that to people, then the ones that read it and go, I'll never do that, then you don't have to keep dealing with them and run background checks and go through all that work on people that never have a prayer of qualifying to go in your house. Weed them out first.
I sent Bob this picture the other morning. Hard to see. This is the people who are being asked to leave.
Clean.
It is very clean. However, their lease that I inherited from the previous landlord said 1 dog, carpets must be kept on floors, no more than 2 cats, and a couple of birds. That's the exact words from their lease. In this picture, the big circles are bird cages. There are 14 birds in this house. A couple is 14, apparently.
Oh, man.
The arrow is pointing to one of 8 cats, no more than 2 cats. And they have one very, very active and not carpet-covered dog that I found.
Well, with 8 cats, the bird problem is easy. You just open the doors on the cages.
Yeah. That one of the many reasons their lease is not going is because of the police issue, and the fact that they straight up lied to me about this is not good. But this conversation has been really good so far. Do you guys have any questions for Bob about the keeping good tenant stuff?
I have a question for Bob. A real quick one. Why did you go from all those units to selling all of them, and now you're almost out of the business?
A big part of it, tired. After 20 plus years of unclogging toilets and answering the phone when it rang in the middle of the night and showing tenants, I was getting tired of it. I had too many other life commitments to devote the time to the properties. I did hire a management company to take over the day-to-day management, and they were terrible. Ran the place into the ground. They let my one place sit empty for a year. They couldn't rent a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath row home in North Bethlehem, which, I put up the for rent sign now. I'm sure I'd have 100 people knocking at the door. They said they couldn't find the proper tenant. They were sending me 20-year-old guys that were short order cooks into a brand new, newly remodeled place. They sent me one woman who was pending eviction from her current place. And when I called them on it, they said, well, no, that's a different date of birth. And it was a very uncommon name. It's not like it was, Susie Smith. It was a very uncommon name, but she used a phony date of birth with the management company when she applied, and they didn't pick up on that. So it was just had enough, did it for 20 some years, got tired of the headaches, and the management company was the final straw. I said, that's it. I'm out of business. Sell the places. And that's what we did. It was a part-time job that I didn't get the paycheck until I finally quit. Moses, you had something?
Yeah, I did. A couple things. Some of my questions I wrote down were kind of answered. I was wondering how picky you guys get with smokers and pets, and it sounds like you kind of just have some rules. Okay, maybe one animal. Is it a problem having smokers? I know it's less popular these days. I'm not a smoker, but it's less popular these days. But do you have smokers, and does it work out okay?
I would put no smoking right in the lease, and if I smelled smoke, I wouldn't throw them out immediately, but I bring to their attention that, hey, you can't smoke here, so go outside. My rule with pets was if you're sharing a backyard, no dogs. Okay. 3-unit apartment building, if everybody's sharing the backyard, the other tenants don't want to be stepping in dog poop. Yeah. So that was the rule with that. If it's a single family home, yeah, go ahead. Have your small insurance company compliable dog running around the backyard. No pit bulls, no chows, nothing the insurance company's giving me hell about.
Gotcha. Cool. And one other thing. So you gave somebody a pass one time when they're having trouble with the rent.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you know that you can do that and they're not going to take advantage of you? Are they going to say, oh, this guy's a pushover, I'm just going to tell him I can't pay it?
Oh yeah, I mean that's a real problem, and you have to determine that yourself. When do I go from being a nice guy to being a sucker? Yeah, it's very profit driven for me. I am being nice to her and giving her a half a month's rent free or 1 month's rent free till she gets back on her feet. Like Matt said, 1 month's rent is an entire year of cash flow. So if she has to move out, not pay for 3 months, and then trash the place, that's 3 years of cash flow, as opposed to I'm just losing a half a month or half a month's rent or 1 month's rent. But that's you have to decide, when am I being taken advantage of?
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
Moses, I rented my first house here in March 1st, so 1 year ago. And within 2 weeks of signing the lease, the husband and wife both got furloughed due to COVID. And the rent at that time was $1,750 a month. But I worked with them. They were able to come up with $1,400, and we just set up a schedule. And within 4 or 5 months, they had paid it back and just renewed the lease with them. And they wrote me a nice email just thanking me over and over again for understanding and all that. So I think you just have to try to work with people as best you can.
Okay. And it sounds like you guys really have good plans for screening people. So you're kind of doing your best on the front end of the deal to get people who are going to want to pay you and want to keep their side of the bargain.
Right.
Like
Through lots of experience, years of experience with bad tenants.
Yeah, so I had mentioned I had no experience, but I was watching, my dad do 2 deals. He had an apartment building in Easton that he rehabbed. So I remember some stories down there, telling somebody working on plumbing, don't flush the potty, and they don't listen to you, things like that. And then another house. Now on that small house, he had some trouble when he actually ended up letting the property go at the end. The tenants stopped paying. He tried to evict them, couldn't evict them, and they trashed the place before they left. So does that happen? I mean, you must have seen some of that action in your experience.
Oh yeah,
so far.
I've had a few that were trashed that had to evict them. The one that the judge gave her another 30 days to pay, and of course she didn't pay. I think I used 5 dumpsters to clean the place out. She had that much crap in there. Yeah. Luckily, those are few and far between. In 25 years, I've actually had to go through with an eviction very few times. Probably count on one hand how many times I've actually had to go through an eviction.
So I think due to your good screening process that you have.
And the good screening came from years of making mistakes, from getting bad tenants in there. Yeah.
And
Matt, I just emailed you my acceptance criteria, by the way, if you want
awesome.
to share that with everybody.
Yeah, we afterwards we'll send a link to the video and some files if we have any shared. I know sometimes Richard has PowerPoints that he puts together. He has a sick obsession with PowerPoint. And we include that in the files, and that'd be awesome. I'll include that, Brian. Moses, on your question, the biggest thing is the screening. If you can prevent a potential issue, you'll see it with a credit and a background check, most of the time, but you're not going to catch them all. And sometimes if you buy a property that tenants are already in place, you're assuming someone else's baggage. I had no opportunity to screen 5 units when I bought our first one, and it thankfully mostly worked out.
Mm-hmm.
But you always have that opportunity to renegotiate leases right in the beginning. But you never know who the people are until you get to know them. So just kind of do your due diligence.
So when you buy,
go ahead.
When you buy a property, if there's already a renter there, is it known that at that time you renew their lease? You're going to make up a new lease with the new owner, right? They're not going to, like, let's say they have 6 months remaining on their lease, but you bought the property. Is it now time as a new owner to get a new lease with them?
The lease will dictate the current lease that they have sometimes has verbiage if a property is sold or not, what happens with that lease. And the new landlord, depending on which lease they use, the new landlord can accept or you can renegotiate. You can always renegotiate a lease with both parties' signature. But for us, it was just less roller coaster and baggage to deal with creating 5 new leases from day one. So we just honored all the old ones until they expired, which was in the few months following the purchase. But that's not always the case. And Bob and Brian, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the sale of the property can trigger change of lease just by the sale of the property because the lease is no longer valid.
I'm not quite sure about that one.
Would that be a rule for Pennsylvania, or is that a federal?
It varies based on jurisdiction. For example, right now, Ryan and I were actively looking for places that are multi-units but have one unit currently vacant because he wants to own or occupy his first multi-unit. And that's a very unique combination to be able to find. So every question we have is the timeline of the leases that the property currently has, so that you don't have to kick someone out as soon as you buy the place for some whatever reason just to move in yourself. But that's some good information. We'll clarify that for everybody for the next one.
I think it is the lease controls that. If the lease says if I sell the place, then you have a certain notice, then that would apply. If it's just a 12-month lease and it doesn't say what happens if the property is sold, then you probably bought the tenant for the remaining of the lease.
Hang on, I'm pulling up one right now.
And if you do, is there like a rule for how much you can increase it between the old lease and the new lease for the kind of situation where you're inheriting renters?
You're talking about increasing rents?
Right. So in a situation where you're buying a house, let's say a 4-family, they're all 4 are rented, you get the chance to renegotiate the leases. Is there a rule in place that you can increase it by a certain amount or a certain percentage?
The only rule that I'm aware of, this is from the Pennsylvania legislature done, is the amount you can ask for in a security deposit may not exceed 1 month's rent. There's people who ask for 2 months rent or first and last month's rent, but you can't ask for more of a security deposit. But I'm not aware of any regulations that dictate how much you can or need to increase rent if you buy the place. You can always go in and negotiate a rent increase through an addendum to the lease or a new lease, but you're the one who defines the lease. You just have to be careful because they already signed a lease prior to you. You don't want to unnecessarily create waves.
There are a few cities like New York, San Francisco that have what they call rent control laws that do limit how much you can raise the rent every year. I'm not aware of any in Pennsylvania, but I don't know about Philadelphia. It is possible that Philadelphia, the city, might have a rent control law in place. So just, I don't think there's any of those active around this side of the state that I know of, even in Allegheny County, but that would be the exception, I think.
Well, the reason why I was asking is I'm originally from New York. So that's why I was curious.
Brian, I think you're right. I do remember, and I have some good friends that are pretty heavy hitters in the Philadelphia area, and they did speak of rent control in the city limits. I'm not sure about the suburbs like Westchester and all those areas, Brandywine, but I think in the physical city of Philadelphia, they do have rent control, which that could put a huge damper on you needing to do your job.
Yeah, be careful. If you think, oh, this deal makes sense because I can double the rent, and you can't double the rent, then a deal may not make sense.
Yeah, I'm going to share something with you guys really quick. This is a lease. Can everybody see just this lease here?
Mm-hmm.
This is an apartment we have. It talks about this is the PAR lease. So if you're using a private lease that you have, just make sure it's reviewed by the attorney that you're going to be using to make sure it's a legitimate thing. This is from the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors, so it's peer reviewed by the PAR and all the legal end of that. So at the very end, they talk about tenants' rights, language, yada, 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 special clauses. And then down here is where if real estate, Acknowledge understanding and property manager on behalf. So
You
here-
scrolled past it already at the top. If you go back up, there was a paragraph about the sale of a property. Little higher, little higher.
two forward.
Keep going.
Oh, yep, there it is.
Right there.
Thanks, Brian.
26. Yeah.
Line 243. The property sold, landlord will give tenant in writing. Notice of security deposit and rent will be transferred to new landlord. The name, address, phone number of new landlord where rent is to be paid if known. And the tenant agrees that landlord may transfer your security deposit and advance rent to the new landlord. And landlord responsibilities to tenant under the lease end after the property's been sold and the lease is transferred. So according to the PIR lease, this lease is transferred to the new landlord. Your responsibilities as the old landlord end if you're selling the property. But security deposits flow right through. And then on the very end, this is where you'd acknowledge it. Landlord transfers lease to a new landlord. Here, this lease would have to be signed by you as a seller and the new landlord as the buyer. So this kind of answers our question. You can transfer this lease to the new tenant, but there's nothing stopping you from going to that tenant and say, hey guys, this is the lease. I'm the new landlord. We, out of policy, create a new lease for all our new tenants. Please help me terminate this one by a termination clause or a termination addendum to this lease and then start a new one. You could set your terms. But this lease will follow.
Thank you. It's very helpful.
Yeah, does that make sense?
It does.
Oh, yeah.
Now, if your lease does not include a sale of property clause, I'm sure there's a sale of property law with tenants occupying it, in Pennsylvania at least, that would cover that if you were to do something that's not on the lease. I would highly suggest using this lease for everyone. It covers nearly all bases. It's peer reviewed. It's used by the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors for tenants who realtors place, landlords who pull in tenants. It's very, very comprehensive and it's updated all the time. But you can't just go Google this and find it. You have to get it from the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors website. I'll gladly send you a copy of it, once they publish a new one, but when you're ready for it, this is the most current.
Okay.
If you have any questions about that?
Water beds are not allowed.
Uh-huh.
Water beds are not authorized.
Not in that place. It's a second floor apartment. So yeah, that's all the disclosures and such there.
Okay.
And that's what I did. 2 of our 5 units were on month-to-month leases when we bought the place. So it was really easy. As soon as we bought it, we sat down, we drafted a new lease for the guys that were on month-to-month. 2 of the commercial leases had several years left. So we just went in and asked them to sign a new lease to kill the old one immediately upon ownership. But with the exact same terms, timeline, and rent that their current lease was. So they felt the first thing people are asking is our rent going up? Or are we getting kicked out? If you go in assuring them, no, you're not going to get kicked out. Your rent's not going to go up. Fulfill the current lease. Don't be that guy. Unless there's super problem tenants is my recommendation. But the one thing we did do is with this property, this place was rented. Let's see. It was rented at $620 a month when we bought it. Okay. It should be rented for about $800 a month. In the current, it's a 1-bed, 1-bath, and pretty nicely redone. And I went in, I said, look, you're on a month-to-month lease. And I printed out this. Let's see. Can you see my file thing here?
No.
Hang on. Can you see this?
Yep.
Okay.
Rental meter.
Yep. So there's this one.
Hmm. I forgot about that website.
Okay. This screen that I'm sharing right now is from Rent-A-Meter. I purchased a 1-month subscription to this to get an accurate report of rent in the area. This is the actual address of this lease. And hang on. And this is the average rent for an apartment just like it. And it comes up with these data, and it pulls this data from Zillow, Realtor, HotPads, all those different websites, and it shows median range, all these different metrics that a tenant would not actually go and research. But this is legitimate information. I went in with this printout and a blank lease, and I sat down and said, hey, Bruce, in 3 years, if you were to move out tomorrow, the person who moves into this apartment would pay me $900 a month. This is what your apartment should rent for. Right now, you're at $620. While I appreciate your long-term tenancy, he's been here for 15 years, I need to start the conversation by saying your rent's not going up. I'm not asking you to raise your rent. I'm not asking you to move. I appreciate everything you've done. However, in 3 years, we really need to get to where you are market average or close to it. So take this information, think about it, and if you can give a little bit each year towards this 825 number so that in 3 years we can be there, I would really appreciate that. This apartment, taxes go up every year. We have to replace things like sidewalks, microwaves, or whatever in the apartment is costs, and your rent hasn't gone up in 10 years. So here's the data. If you move out of this apartment, you're also going to pay $900 somewhere else. So it's in both of our best interests to slowly get there and not have you leave. And it was well received by 3 out of the 5 tenants. The other 2 people didn't have a rent increase because their lease was still good. But on the month-to-month leases, this is what I presented. And it was able to have them feel like they made a decision in their best interest. They have information that I presented to them. And this website, it cost me $20 for 1 month, just to go in and print unlimited reports on all these things. And it immediately got me from 620 to 700 every month. And he was happy for it. He came up with this number, not me.
I pay for the pro subscription and I use it all the time to analyze, do I want to buy this property or not? And the cool thing is each of those peer properties you can click on and dive down and get more details. And you have to be careful because sometimes there's one, mansion that will skew the results, or one doghouse that will skew the results in the other way. Zillow also has a rent estimator, and you can type in the actual address and it'll estimate rent for that exact address as well. I use both of those tools.
Matt, I think it's a neat idea that you sort of let the tenant choose his own rent. I mean, I've never heard about that, but you know what? It's a win-win situation that for both of you guys, you're getting more money. He doesn't have to go look for a place. So it's a neat idea.
If you look at it from a value add perspective, you bought the property knowing that it's going to perform as is. So if nothing changes, we knew that it was going to do X. So anything I could do to improve it was going to be bonus on top. And we went in, and overall, I got an extra $350 a month in rent increases from people who offered them to me, not by me saying your rent's going up, because then all of a sudden you're the asshole.
Right.
If you present them with a clear set of data and the alternative, if you choose not to renew their month-to-month lease, they're going to have to go out and rent one of those 30 places that's on the report I just sent them. And they're going to go up a lot more than I'm offering now. And then come back with a number that's fair. And even someone else in the apartment complex, they came back with a similar number. And it was very nice to see their reaction. So
I bet if you gave them that list and they went on Zillow and looked up the properties that were at the price they're paying now, they would be real dog houses compared to what they're already in.
Yep, that's for sure. That's why the house that we have, the people that are moving out, it's rented for $1,020 a month right now, but it's just the house. We're including the garage, and it's going to be $1,750 a month. It's ridiculously under rented, and they're not taking care of it, and they're breaking all parts of the lease with police. It's a no-brainer. Right. But it's not always cut and dry, and they're still not out. So we'll see when they leave. But
I wanted to also tell Moses, especially, that I use Cozy. It's COZY.co. It's free to landlords. And I manage my properties with that. The tenants, the future tenants, if they're interested, they will pay Cozy to do their own background check for you. So you don't pay for that. They collect the rent, and they send emails to them when the rent is due. Your renter has a portal. They go in and say, I need this done on the property or that done on the property, and that goes to you. So there are some great tools out there like that that are absolutely free that you can take advantage of as a landlord.
That's interesting. So Cozy, kind of like PayPal, or so they're paying into Cozy. Cozy's requesting the money. You're not yelling to receive the rent, and then Cozy sends it to your bank account.
Yeah, they hold it for a week before they give it to you. And that's how they make money on the float, right?
Yeah.
They also they sell renters insurance to your renters, and they charge them for the background and criminal checks. So, have your tenants pay for their own background checks.
Yeah, Brian, that's another really good point. My brother-in-law is an investor in Philadelphia, and he uses, I don't know if it's that or something similar, but by putting the ball in their court to have to pay for their own criminal background checks or credit reports or whatever, that's, like Bob said, that's just one more kind of gatekeeping, that if they don't have the $40 to come up with a background check or whatever, a lot of people may walk away from that.
Yeah. If you guys open your chat window, I just dropped in my acceptance criteria. You can probably download that right now if you want to. And that's geared toward a certain level of property. For an $800 a month apartment, you might have to go down a little bit on your credit score, et cetera, but it gives you an idea for what I'm giving to people to weed them out up front.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, for sharing the app and your document there. I did download it. I didn't look at it yet.
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to share another thing with you guys really quick. So Brian, Cozy was purchased by apartments.com.
Yeah.
We use apartments.com also, and it's very, very user friendly. And what it is, if you see the screen here, you have all your different properties in here. You can add different units. When you have units go to rent, you can advertise them on different sites for the rent, have people apply for that apartment directly through the website. But the cool part about it is you can have the applications and everything all through here. It siphons through your leads to see who's BS or not. And then this is the neat thing. Under payments, it's free for a landlord, as Brian said. It goes through each unit and it says this unit, the name, balance due, how they made payments. If they make an offline payment, you can record it. And it's basically like an accounting software on this website. But this one right here, this is the gentleman whose lease you saw. Started way, way, way back here in November. We started with our new rent, and he made a payment through apartments.com, through his bank account, and they put the money right from their account into mine. It takes a week, but it costs me nothing. He doesn't have to write a check. And if he's late or there's not enough money in his account, it automatically charges and bills the late fee to him. It's all automated. And it's here. It's super easy. It's a little bit time delayed from the time you send your invoice or whatever till the time you get it. So his rent's due on the 20th. It marks as paid on the 20th if there's enough money in his bank account to pull it. But it won't show up in my account until the 6th or the 7th. But this service is free for landlords. And if you scale more than 1 or 2 units, going around picking up cash and all this stuff could be a total pain in the ass. So for whatever.
You can also put a stogie in your mouth, drive around and collect cash on the first of the month if you prefer that. But I really like this better.
Yeah, agreed.
So a quick story. I was a police officer in Bethlehem for 20 plus years. And before I retired, I was a lieutenant. I was in charge. I was shift commander in charge of like 20 some guys. Well, the one day my captain calls me and he goes, "Hey, Bob, we got a problem on your platoon. One of your guys is on the take. He's either taking bribes, running numbers, dealing drugs. Something's going on, but our vice guys are going to start watching him. Wanted you to know that one of your guys is up to no good." I said, "Okay, well, who is it?" "Well, I can't tell you that." I said, "Well, what is he doing?" I said, "Well, he's been seen driving around town in the patrol car in uniform, and he's going to all these different locations, and he's walking out with an envelope." I'm like, "Okay, do you have any of the addresses?" And he starts naming my apartment buildings. I'm like, "Captain, those are my buildings, and that's me collecting the rent." But apparently I was under surveillance with the vice guys. They thought I was running numbers or dealing drugs because I was going around in uniform collecting rent.
Wow. So you were the guy they were investigating.
I was, yep.
That is nuts.
Yeah. And then I had to remind the captain, I'm like, "Okay, that address, you helped me remodel the bathroom in that building. You know I own it."
That's funny. I guess in the end, did they have a problem with you doing that from the cruiser?
No, not really. Not really. I wasn't violating. I wasn't banging on doors. I had mailboxes in the foyer of every building, a locking mailbox that said landlord. So I would have the tenants deposited in there. And then, in my normal travels, my day off, my day of work, whatever it was, I'd go in, take the envelope, walk out.
Oh, okay. This wasn't when you were on duty.
No.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sure,
I wasn't knocking on the door as a police officer saying, "Hey, pay up."
I'm sure showing up in your uniform in the cruiser, though, helped with any tenant.
Everybody was on time.
I want to piss him off.
Yeah. People would pay on time. I would park the cruiser in front of the apartment building. Just if I had to write a report, I'd sit there in the cruiser, and it kept crime down in the neighborhood. One of the best things was if I had an empty apartment, I would let our SWAT team practice in it. So the SWAT van would be pulled up out front. There'd be crime scene tape everywhere, the big sign saying "Caution, police training in progress." And the vice guys the SWAT guys would get to run around and, play bad guy, play cops and robbers. Yeah, kept the neighborhood nice and quiet.
Here's another great tip, and that is to get a free Google Voice phone number. You can link it to your cell phone, but when my renters want to call, they don't call my cell phone number, even though it comes to my cell phone. I get a Google Voice. You can text on it. You can email on it. It costs you nothing. It's one more layer between you and the renter. I highly suggest that.
Yes, you need to keep up a barrier between you and the tenants. I had a tenant, the day I served him with the eviction paper, he came to my house and trashed my truck in my driveway. Right after that, I got a post office box, so nobody ever knew my home address again.
Brian, that's a really, really good thing. And I feel like we have a lot more in common than we know. Check this out. This is my Google Voice account.
Yeah.
Only thing this is used for: tenants and official work information. It records text message. Oh, here it is in writing saying they're going to move out on time. I screenshot that and emailed it to myself because it says they're going to leave on time. All these different things. It records voicemails. I can make a call right from here, from your computer. And that the neat thing is that everybody has a smartphone nowadays.
Uh-huh.
It's right here on Google Voice. Click on it and it rings like a phone on your phone, and they don't have your real phone number. In fact,
it gives you a choice whether you want to answer it or not. It'll say incoming call from Jaden Corbett, press 1 to answer. And if it goes to voicemail, it'll do voice to text. I think, Matt, it'll even take the voice and translate in text, and you can read it.
And they don't know it's a Google phone. It's like $15 a month, something like that. I forget the number, but you can create a custom voicemail. They have no clue it's a Google Voice number.
I've never paid for Google Voice. I thought it was absolutely free.
Oh, was it? No, I have it through my G Suite, through my email domain. So maybe that's why it costs money, but it is a lifesaver. No one knows my real phone number. I mean, you guys all have my cell phone number, but no one that is a renter has it or will ever have it.
Mhm.
So just isolate yourself for your own good. So, all right, we're coming up in the last few minutes here. There's a few things we didn't really get to, but next time I want to talk. There's a video that I have. It's from Marcus and Milchamp. They're a massive portfolio, basically a commercial real estate broker that they published something about the recession and if there's going to be fire sales of property coming up. It's a really good 5 or 6 minute video. I'll email it to everybody and explains why the bubble is a real thing, but the bubble is not going to be a hold your cash and buy because every house on your street is going to be for sale. It's a much different bubble than 2008.
You can see as well. Look up here. See my eye perspective? What do you see? Is this right?
So does anybody else have anything? I know we were going to talk about that and leverage and a big portfolio deal, but maybe we could do that on the next call. It's nice to have everybody talk and learn from each other. I think that's more valuable than Bob. Your presentation was awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for inviting me in.
Yeah. Do you have anything else that you'd like to have addressed in the next call?
If I think of anything, I'll shoot you a text.
Yeah, please. And if you know anybody who might have value or get value from being on these calls, let me know. We usually have about 10 guys on the call, and there are several of them that are out other commitments today. So,
So Matt, I'm not an expert on lease to own. I'm doing my first deal right now, but I've done some training on it. I'm going out to Phoenix for 6 days of training on it in April. But at some point I'd be glad to share. It's a really, really interesting niche. It's sort of like owning rental properties, but not having to be a landlord. And it really boosts your cash flow incredibly.
Cool. Yeah, sure thing. Anybody else?
No, thank you for all the information. Thanks for sharing all your stories. It was a nice call today.
I hope
Very
it was valuable
informative.
for everybody. It usually never goes as planned, but it's because we have some really good content that comes out and good information. So that's all that
All right.
matters.
Thank
Have a
you,
good
guys.
day.
See you guys later.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.